Let's play a quick game. I'm gonna put up 3 clips from 3 different films, and you have 5 seconds to guess the name of each clip. Go.
You got the makings of greatness in you, but you gotta take the helmet.
All right, we're zeroing in on it.
We asked for the ugliest face in Paris, and here he is, Quasimodo.
So if you were able to guess the name of each one of those clips, or maybe even just one of those clips, then your life has been affected by a man named Christophe Vacher. My name is Sir Galliard IV, and I had the honor of interviewing Christophe Vacher just recently. He is an amazing man, an amazing artist, and an amazing art director too. He worked on all 3 of those films, and so many more. So without further ado, let's hop right into the interview. Hi everybody, welcome to episode 2 of Galliard Interviews. I am incredibly honored to have Christophe Vacher with me. So cool to have you on my interview. I'm really honored. I actually found you from the reel that you posted recently where I suppose we should start with an introduction. So Christophe, would you want to just give us a brief introduction of who you are and what you do?
So I'm both a painter and an art director in mostly animation. I mean, entertainment in general, but mostly animation. And so I've been in the business for like 32 years, something like that. And I started in France, so I'm from France. And I started there in 1989. So I've been in the entertainment business for this whole time, mostly animation, but I did lots of other things, and I do painting for galleries on the side as in parallel. So I've worked for like all the main animation studios you can think of. One of them being, of course, Disney and DreamWorks, Universal Studios. So yeah, it's been a long career.
Well, I just want to say, your work is incredible. I saw that you worked on movies like Treasure Planet. Is that right?
Yeah.
Treasure Planet, and then Hunchback of Notre Dame. It was so cool. What kind of paintings are those, like background paintings, real quick, for like movies and stuff?
So my generation basically went from like the traditional way of animating movies and TV series to like the digital age. So that was like a massive change. Not good for everybody, but like basically you adapt or you die, and that's pretty much it. So the way we were doing it, I started as a designer, like a character designer for secondary characters, and then I was a layout artist, what we call layout, creating the design of the environments, and also working a little bit on the camera moves. And then I became a background painter. That was mostly what I did at the beginning. I did that for several years, background painting. And then from that, I turned into what we call visual development, concept art, which is kind of similar. And then I became an art director about 20 some years ago. So when we were painting backgrounds, we were painting them with acrylics, acrylic paint on boards. And then we changed eventually to digital. And Treasure Planet was actually the first movie where we were entirely painting digitally, and everything was actually made digitally. Even though it looked like it was painted, everything was made digitally.
Wow, that's incredible. I had no idea. I love the steampunk pirate, like the whole look of it was so unique.
Yeah,
so cool.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I think what eventually ended in the movie was not even like it was just the tip of the iceberg of what had been worked on and what had been created, because it was such an incredible idea, and like all the artists who came on board, like especially in concept stage, were just so amazing. It was just like day after day after day, I was looking at all that was being created, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And they took only, unfortunately, they took only like of course it's debatable, but to me they and to many other artists, they took only what was like really, it was interesting looking, but it was not the wildest that had been created on this movie. There were some concepts that were just out of this world, and they didn't make it into the movie. The movie is still great to look at. I don't, many people feel that it wasn't really supported the way it should have been, and therefore it didn't get to the success it deserved. To me, it's a massively underrated movie, but for what it was creating at that time, and it was just taking a big step into an imaginary world that had never been seen before, and it still shows on the screen. It's just like it's a very different movie and different from anything that Disney had ever done before. We were all super happy to work on this movie.
So are you able to share, were there any pieces that you wanted to get into the movie, or like little concept arts or characters that
I can't really do that. Like, this is, I can show, what I've done on the movie, of course. I mean, but like I can't really show like stuff that has never been seen before, and it's just and also I was not the only artist on it, so it's like you can only show what you participated in, and also what's been shown generally on all screens. So but yeah, it was an incredible experience.
That is so cool. That was one of the big childhood movies for me. So different and so unique. So very, very cool to see. And so moving on, going back to your history, where did you go to school? How did you know that you wanted to get into art? And then what were your role models growing up? That kind of thing.
So originally, well, I mean, I always wanted to be in art, but originally, I was drawing before I knew how to write. So it was in there. That's all I wanted to do. But I wanted to be a comic book artist, and that's what I started aiming at. So my early, influences were like Tintin, in Europe. It's mostly known in Europe. But Spielberg made a movie about Tintin. It was huge in Europe. It's like this old comic book that was always super popular, especially in France. And so that was my very first influence. And then I got into what we call the Belgian school of comic books, which was, all kind of like, clean line, like Hergé, which was like who was the author of Tintin. And then all the school that was created based on the Tintin style. So Blake and Mortimer was another one. There was like there was a whole bunch, and then so that was my kind of foundation. And so I was copying all that stuff when I was a kid, and then becoming a teenager, I started to discover other things. And one big major change for me was Heavy Metal magazine. And Heavy Metal magazine had been, I don't know if it still exists in the US, but it came from France, but eventually it moved into other countries and the US. And the US, after it had died in France, the US continued to publish Heavy Metal magazine with like, wild artists that were like, mostly American. But originally it was started by a few people like Mobius and Drouillet and Casa and like a few other ones. And so Mobius became kind of like my model. And so I started to just like, copy stuff, and, it was different from the Belgian school of drawing. It was still influenced by like older artists, like from the French historic era, with like etching, a lot of etching. But he had two styles. Mobius had two styles. He was doing Blueberry as a Western comic book, where he was drawing with like a brush, like it was more like inking with a brush, and black China ink. And then he had like the Arzak. So Arzak was like his sci-fi line, and completely. So his sci-fi line was much more like etching and like drawing with like a nib, so still China ink, but with like a nib and a very fine kind of drawing, very clean line, but like with a lot of etching, and not the more expressive work with the brush that he was doing on Blueberry, and it was completely, two different worlds, like Western world and sci-fi world. So he was a big influence on me. So I did a lot of very, fan art, like comic book stuff. And that was where I was going. I had become kind of a semi-professional in comic books and illustration. And I met Kada, one of the three guys who...
So that is part one of my interview with Christophe Vacher. We have so much more content, so I'm going to break it up into 10-minute parts. Part two will be coming out soon. I'm also going to be including who the winner of my last giveaway was very, very soon. I don't really have anything else. Thank you guys for watching. I know my editing is so-so, but it's a work in progress. So thank you guys for everything. God bless. Have a good week. Bye.